Good afternoon from our side as well. We hope you had a great lunch break. And now the next 20 to 30 minutes, we will talk about the regulatory impacts on sustainable third-party ecosystems. And well, we will start with a short introduction, not only of ourselves, but what we're doing the whole day. So what are our projects for, and so on and so forth. And after that, we want to share our view on the current situation we are facing, the world we are living in regard to third-party ecosystems. Well, and then we will talk a lot about problems, issues, challenges we have to face. But I bring my colleague with me, and he will give you some insights on the success factors, which are important in order to handle all these challenges. And after a key takeaway, we are done so far and looking forward to the Q&A session. But let's start with the introduction of ourselves. I will start because I'm already talking. My name is Fleischer. I'm director at Deloitte Risk Advisory, and I'm responsible for social compliance services. So what does it mean? Social compliance services is about the social aspects, the S in ESG. So we are working with a lot of different regulations like the Supply Chain Due Diligence Act, the LKSG for the German ones, the upcoming CSDDD, the EUDR, the CBAM, CSRD, you name it. There are so many regulations we have to tackle. And that's where we came from the regulatory perspective. And I also had the great honor to lead the LKSG project, the Deloitte LKSG project. And it started 3 years ago, I think. And well, implementing this regulation means more than just to run a risk analysis and to write a policy statement. It's about third-party management. It's about, oh, we have some technical issues, I think. It's about dealing with supply chain management, with own operations, with so many different topics. And that's where Anton jumped in to take over the third-party risk management process. And time for your introduction, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, good afternoon also from my side. My name is Anton. I'm a partner within our German risk advisory practice at Deloitte, and I'm heading our entire third-party management service offering in Germany and Central Europe, where we're focusing on the one hand, from a third-party management perspective, focusing on risk, on how we can enable our clients to really end-to-end operate their third-party management holistically, including all different risk types and areas you might have. But on the other hand, we're also supporting our clients in the area of digitalization, in supporting them with digitalization, their contract lifecycle management, how to bring that to a next level, because from our perspective, all these things go hand in hand, and you have to look at them jointly in order to make that successful. And in that context, also Christina and myself and our teams are working closely together, because we as the central team, we look at the holistic process and then bring in from all the different risk areas the specialists in order to tackle that. So from compliance area with Christina's team, but we're also very closely with our cyber colleagues for the cyber topics, for other compliance areas, for more legal aspects or sustainability aspects, so that we bring the foundation, and that's also how we tackle it, and we're going to deep dive into that a little bit later today also as well, in order how to approach it. So it's not in silos anymore, so that's how we tackle our service, but it's also how we address it at the clients in order to set up their system accordingly.
Okay, then let's have a look at the current situation we are facing. So first of all, and that's my daily business, we have a constantly growing regulatory landscape. I just told you what I'm working with. There are so many different regulations you have to tackle when we are talking about supply chain management, when we are talking about your own operation, and they are all in the sustainability context. Starting really with the CSDDD or the Supply Chain Due Diligence Act, which really has a great impact on our supply chains and our own operations. There are so many other directives and acts like the battery regulation, like the CSRD, the EUDR, which sounds like it's just about wood, but it's about so many other raw materials. So there are so many different regulations you have to cover, and it's more like the management of just the supply chain. You have to tackle all these regulatory requirements. That's the first thing we have to face. The second thing is that supply chains get more and more complex. We live in a fully connected, globalized world, and our supply chains look like that as well. So it's not just having a relationship to local suppliers. You have to manage all these global networks, and that's hard work. And you need a lot of data and a lot of information in order to handle that. That's the third point I want to mention. We have an increasing demand for data processing. You need a bunch of data just to just handle the risk which occur from the supply chains or the third-party ecosystems. And you need hundreds of data points to write all these reports in regard to the sustainable regulation. Like the CSRD, you need, I think, 350 data points just to write this one report. That's a huge amount of data, and it's not just about the collecting. I mean, it's quite challenging to get all the data together, but how can you use it wisely? What can you do just to use it to get a connection between all these laws? Because I think this is one of the big challenges you have to face. All these regulations have an interconnection, and I think it's hard work to get the data together and then to use it wisely. And the last point is that we have a changed role of suppliers in the organizations. What we see in our daily business is that organizations really struggle to manage supplier relationships. Because looking back to the good old days, it was normal that the procurement department was solely responsible for a supplier relationship. And now you need, well, a whole bunch of departments to handle that. You need the compliance department, you need legal, you need sustainability, you need procurement for sure, but you have to interact, and they have to interact. They have to work together, and most of the companies don't have a governance structure for that. How can all these departments work together in order to manage the risk which occur from supply chains and to fulfill the legal requirements and to handle supply chain. So that are the questions which we have to face or which we have to answer. And that is what we are talking about in the next few minutes, because now it's the do's and don'ts. How can we handle all these challenges? What can we do? And what do we see in our projects? What is working and what's not working? And this is
my part? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Then we need to switch place, because I just learned earlier that I need to stand in front of that. So don't worry if I'm trying to escape. That's not because of you. It's just because I'm used to walk around by talking, not standing always in the same spot. But I'll try to keep here so that the camera is still on me. So what we want to talk about in the next minutes is a little bit the success factors. And I want to say up front, you can see I'm already moving. What I want to highlight is there is no, and that's something also we tell our clients every time, there is no one central blueprint how to tackle that in a good way, because all your organizations, our clients' organizations, are individual, and also their whole supply chains are individual. So therefore, how to tackle that and how to manage risks in there is not unique. So it can always be an area, a framework, a direction where we can lead and guide. But therefore today we also don't want to show how it's been best, but we want to focus a little bit about what we learned over the past 10 years dealing with clients in these centers and see what were typical pitfalls they stepped in, which mistakes they made, and what we learned from them. And to share that, we thought that might be a little bit interesting to see how you can optimize that and what you can avoid, because that's going to save you a lot of time, a lot of nerves, and also money. Because that's something in most companies is very, not too much of that available. So therefore, if you tackle that up front and you're aware of a few things, we won't focus on that. And therefore, I want to bring today like three dimensions of perspective, which would like to address from a success factors perspective. One is strategic design of processes and IT integration. Second one will be organizational structure. And the last one, focusing on strategic partnerships. So let's start with the strategic process design and IT integration. What are some do's which we see which are really successful? So from our experience, we see many clients just went in and started right away defining things and then starting with the tool selection at the same time and rolling out things. I always say, take a step back and really look closely what you're really looking for. Do an in-depth requirement assessment, not only for the specific need you have now, but also think about what is the need we're going to have in 1 year ahead, 3 years ahead, 5 years ahead. And is this something which is only relevant for us as a department, or is this something which might interest us as a complete group and also other departments, so that we really focus on what do we really want in total, so that we have an open design for the requirements we have. That is also then the next point, ensure flexibility and scalability. We don't create or design processes just for now. We want to create them, and that's also closely linked to the regulatory topic, for the future, because there will always new requirements from external regulators coming in, also from own internal policies, etc., which you need to address. So if you have a closed design of a process, you always have to break it up later on. Therefore, keep in mind that at the beginning you already design it with loose ends, so that you always can nod on and jump on and add on to that, because then you're already prepared, and the new regulation or new requirements are easier. Then you don't have to completely start over again from the beginning, but really can put on where you left off and design it that way. But that's something you just have to keep in mind at the beginning, also when designing the tools, etc. Second one is involve all relevant stakeholders from the beginning, because in the back days it was very closely supplier were managed by procurement, that's it. Nowadays that's way more complex. It's procurement, we have operations, we have legal departments, we have risk departments, finance departments, because all the areas are interested in how this is handled. They have all specific needs and are also addressing also third parties and suppliers from a risk perspective from different angles. So if you have an approach which combines that, it's easier for you and reduces the effort on your side, but also on the supplier side, because we are not only advisors to our clients, we are also in many cases, we are the suppliers. So we also get all these requests from a third party risk perspective. So please respond to that questionnaire. Please respond to that questionnaire. In the worst case, we're also getting like 6 different requests. We have 6 different tools, 6 different processes at the end, but we're delivering 80% the same content, just in different ways. So that's creating a lot of work on our side, on the client side, and that's something which can be avoided if everybody's involved at the beginning. And the last one, focus on user friendliness. I mean, everybody from us knows it. If you go into these tools and you already don't like the first page, then it's really hard to work with that. So think about what is really required and how you can get the information you need in a way which is understandable without an IT study before, so that it's really feasible, again, for you and the supplier. So these are the do's. They're very closely linked to the don'ts as well on the other side. So don't ignore total cost of ownership. I mean, that's something which is quite common and known. It's not only now for the implementation. What is the cost for the whole thing for the next X years you want to run that? Because that's something which is neglected and needs to be early addressed in budget discussions. Second one is don't neglect the vendor selection. This is closely linked to the requirements. Very often we see that a client come to us and say, hey, we have selected that tool and now we want to design what we want to do with that. That's a little bit the wrong way, because if you don't know exactly what you want, how do you know which tool you want to have? So therefore, really think about not what is in the marketing of the tool providers, and I know there are some tool providers here as well, I'm sorry for that, but we see marketing is marketing, and in many cases it's not properly working the way it is supposed. Therefore, really look closely what you're really looking for, not what is promised, but what you really need, and also what you will need in the future, and then select a tool by that, and stating, okay, we don't buy a tool for now, we want to deal with also in 5 years. So are we able to adopt to the changes? But is also the tool provider to able to adopt to that, and are they planning to adopt to things? Then don't implement without testing. That seems like a no-brainer. We've seen it differently, so we just want to mention it. Do a pilot, please, because it's difficult if you go live without proper testing and then you do it in the operational phase. That's really critical. And last but not least, don't rely solely on technology. I know, again, with the marketing, they say, okay, the tool can do everything. We have key AI implemented. No, it's not. So really, just to be sure, and that's also something you might tell your procurement colleagues, yeah, but we have seen that tool. It's very cheap and it can do everything. We just have to plug it in. Yeah, good luck with that, but it's not typically working. So that's the strategic process design and IT integration. Next one is a little bit about organizational excellence, because all the topics mentioned before also need to be embedded in the organization and the people who are doing that, who are dealing with that the whole day. So coming through the duals, from the beginning, clearly define roles and responsibilities. And again, with the point earlier, involve everybody. Don't forget anybody, because if you have to break up a governmental structure later on, it's always difficult. So what I always say, I understand that all clients and all companies always want to get started. They want to start implementing, want to roll out a tool, want to show progress. Take the sufficient time to design what you really want, whom you need, and how the process should look like. Every time you invest there, you're going to save at the end of the whole process and on the life cycle. Next one, promote cross-functional collaboration. Again, we are often getting requests just from one single department, like the compliance department who wants to roll out a new compliance process, or IT departments who say, oh, sorry, we need to set up a new cyber program. We say, that's fine, you can deal it that way, just make sure that you at least align with the other departments. It might be also possible to bring it all in one central process. We're also doing that, which can be very successful, but it's not necessarily required. But at least align from a tooling perspective, process perspective, and use the synergies you have and that you might lead. And again, foster risk-aware culture. We are kind of surprised very often when we go into the client environments and see how few awareness there is for risks in various departments. They're very focused on, hey, that's my daily job. I don't care whether that burns down because it doesn't impact me. Or if your supplier or your service provider burns down, it impacts you because it's going to impact the whole company. So the risk awareness that this is relevant for everybody, regardless whether it's finance, cyber, etc., that's closely linked to the cross-functional thinking. Because if it fails at one category, it's also going to fail at the others. So that's important to know and just to get into the thinking and the way of thinking about things. And last but not least, invest in continuous improvement. You set a lot of time, set it up, put a lot of thinking in. How are the processes designed? How we want to have it? What we want to achieve with that? But also think about how we keep that up and keep the movement up, because your organization is changing, the regulation is changing, your suppliers are changing. So you need to be able to keep up with that speed and at best way keep ahead of it. And therefore, just make sure that you plan that in and not only start, okay, finally we are done, the tool is live, the process is live, bye, I'm going on vacation for 3 years. That's unfortunately not the way it works anymore because it's too dynamic and the changes are coming too quickly. Again, this is also linked very much with the don'ts we have. Don't expect awareness for regulatory requirements. We're very often, even in departments who are dealing with that daily, we're surprised and see how less people are aware and caring about what is required from them. And we're not talking about the obvious ones like the data protection regulation, things like that, but also about internal policies, because typically you have three kind of dimensions where you're getting requests. You have the regulatory ones, which are in kind of acts like the Supply Chain Due Diligence Act, CSDDD, things like that, coming from external ones, or DORA for financial service providers. You have internal ones like internal policies, your own objectives, you have your own standards you want to follow, and you have the third ones coming from your clients who also put it down, because when you're in the role of supplier, you need to comply with that as well. So that awareness and that also kind of human sense, how to act to that and how to feel that, how to take that on, that is really important also to get into the people thinking and not just think about, I just care about my daily business. Don't underestimate effort. I mean, that's typically coming from an advisor like me, because our effort estimations are typically higher than the ones for our clients, but it's not only our cost as external ones, also internal ones. It's interesting if you see, or if you ask our clients, what do you think, what is your estimation about how much time from one of your employees you need for a service? And we had just had recently a discussion with a client. We said, you're going to need for the year, you need 2 FTEs to address that topic. His estimation was 0.1 FTE. That should be sufficient. So that's not going to happen. So really be aware what needs to be done and really put it down and say, okay, what tasks are there? What do we need from an alignment perspective, operational perspective, how to handle that, because that's also going to kill your internal budget calculation if you have to afterwards set it up. And not only for external costs, also the internal running cost. Don't neglect the human element. That's very closely linked again, but it needs to be addressed here as well. An organizational topic. It's not only technology. You always have to, when it comes to managing risk, you need the human expertise and judgment about in order to bring that and also tell the technology what is required. Last but not least, in order to enable all that, don't forget sufficient training in order to create risk awareness in organization, awareness for regulatory requirements, but also how to deal with all these things, because it's great if you build up and design a great process, you buy a great tool, it's working properly, but if you don't tell the people about it and you don't train them properly, you're going to have a lot of negative feedback. Oh, it's not working, I don't understand it, I've never heard of that. That's something which can be avoided with proper training and setups. So we have strategic process design and integration. We have organization structure. Last one is the external one, strategic partnerships. Because it's not only what we had in the past, we have a procurement department, they look for the cheapest supplier, we buy the goods and we're done. Going forward, in order to be successful, it's really recommended to really focus on strategic partnerships and think way more from a long-term perspective. Who's important for us, who can help us, and who wants to go on a joint journey with us in order to drive that and not only be a one-off provider of service or goods. You will always have that as well, but the big ones, typically, you should do a bit more. So first of all, start with conduct a thorough due diligence. Really look closely into the supplier or into the service provider, what they really have, in order to be aware of any risk. And that's from an operational risk perspective, reputational risk perspective, financial, compliance perspective, and regulatory perspective, so that you're sure if we onboard that supplier or that service provider, we are going to be safe because there are no harms which we should avoid upfront. Second one is also check not only about your internal own departments, again, the cross-function part, check with all your requirements, because your cyber department may have different requirements to the external supplier than your legal department or your procurement department, so that you really make sure that all are fulfilled. And that's again what I mentioned with the example. Make sure if you do the assessment that it goes out at least at the same time or at once, so not over a period of 9 months from different angles and tools. That's really difficult then also to compile and bring together all the results. Next one, establish suitable communication channels with the supplier. Treat them as partners, because if you communicate with them, they will also communicate with you in order to ensure that if there are problems, they will let you know upfront when you're a partner. If you're just a client who is waving with a bill and saying, hey, I want my delivery, it's more critical. So what are good communication channels for regular exchange so that you jointly be successful, you can learn from each other, and you jointly go on the journey. But therefore, like in every partnership at home or relationship, communication is key. Last one, diversify supplier base. I know in some areas it's difficult. I just understand also from what we heard earlier with Bosch with the semiconductor part, there are some areas where it's difficult to have a broad supplier base. So therefore, there you need to choose even more. In areas where it is, from risk perspective, makes sense to diversify, to split the risk also a little bit among the population. Coming to the don'ts. And that's something especially for the procurement colleagues. I know they always don't want to hear it, but don't solely look on the costs, because it's way more. Look also on the experience you have, and also have a look in the past. So what have we done with the supplier? Are they willing? Are they addressing to our needs? Are they flexible? And then sometimes, if even it's a bit more expensive, it might be worth the money. Don't expect long-term relationships. Suppliers who are willing to work with you a long time, invest in you, and jointly work on solutions in order to make their services or products better, address to your needs, they are also more willing to be not only in times when it's successful, but also in times when it's critical. Also, if you might struggle, they are more willing to help. So that's really something you should invest in. Don't ignore early warning signs. That's something when it comes to prevention in these third-party risk management. So also go into monitoring and the preventive measures, like what might be pre-warning signals from a finance market, from any adverse media screening results. So not only wait until incidents happens, in best way, you have a feeling or see, okay, there might be a bankruptcy coming up, or there might be something politically in that area, so that we can things always address up front. And last but not least, underestimate continuous monitoring. That's also the same area from a performance perspective, but also from a risk perspective. So in a nutshell, these were the things we had from the T perspective: strategic process and IT integration, structure organization, and strategic partnerships. And the key takeaway would Christina summarize them once again. Thank you.
So the key takeaway. I think we are all on the same page when we think about the regulatory landscape. It is complex and it is increasing, but maybe not. I mean, Ursula von der Leyen announced a couple of weeks ago that the Omnibus Directive will help us all to handle the regulatory landscape. It will yeah, you're laughing, me as well. It should reduce the reporting costs and the reporting efforts. Let's wait and see what happened. I think it's announced for the 25th of February. Yeah, maybe it will help us all, we will see. But it's a matter of fact that we have really an evolving regulatory landscape. And our third-party ecosystems are complex as well. It's a global world, it's a fully connected world, and that means that we rely on so many suppliers and on networks which are well, kind of endangered by so many things, by wars, by the pandemic, by increasing markets, no technology. There are so many things which has an impact on our supply chains, and we really have to work with the risk, and we have to know the risk which may occur. So that's important. And that's why we need third-party risk management in some way. And that's what's a key takeaway from my side, because yes, you need a holistic supply chain management. You need a holistic third-party risk management, but you have to find out what it means for your company. There's no blueprint. There is no role model for that. You have to build up your own sufficient supply chain management, which brings all together the economic side, the risk side, and well, the regulatory side. And that's what we want to invite you to. Just think about how a holistic supply chain management can look like in your company. And we would be happy to discuss that in the Q&A session afterwards. So what are your ideas about that? So thank you very much.